first exciting things I saw were some beautiful plates by Carlton Ball. Carlton Ball was an excellent teacher, and he taught at Mills. He started the ceramics department there, and I was an art major, and I was painting major, and I saw these plates he had done with a turquoise glaze over an unglazed red clay, and I just thought they were so beautiful, and I wanted to take pottery. Well, I could, except that I was trying to get a teaching credential, and every time that pottery class met, I had to take some darn class in education. And I was finally in my graduate year, I think, when I thought, I just got to get in that pottery class. And he said, Carlton Ball said, "Oh, you can come anyway, come when you can, and you'll pick it up." And he let me in, and I just loved it. And when the children were little, I found I just couldn't paint. I liked painting, but I couldn't paint because you have to have a little bit of peace and quiet and well, it's just not possible with 4 kids running around. And I didn't have a studio and any place to do it except the outdoors. And anyway, then I thought, well, I could make pottery. And my sister-in-law gave me an old potter's wheel. It was made over the frame of an old sewing machine where you treadled it with your feet. And of course you couldn't get much speed, and of course it was funny, and the belt kept breaking, but it was a potter's wheel. And I put it out under the oak tree, and that was my studio, and I put a big crock of clay out there under the tree, and I let the kids play in the clay while I did. So it gave them something to do, and it gave me what I like to do, and that's kind of how it went. And then the years went by, and I still was working out under the oak tree when, by that time I had a little space inside the garage where I could keep things out of the rain. But one of the editors of the Ladies' Home Journal, she was the arts and decoration editor, was talking. She came out to San Francisco because she wanted to find, this is when would it have been? About 1965, I think. She wanted to find, they were trying to push the idea that women can have their cake and eat it too.
I see.
And they were having a special issue, and this issue had a section on women in the arts. And somebody had told her that I was a good potter. And so she wanted to interview me. And this was over the phone. She called me from San Francisco, and I said, "No, I'm not a good potter. You don't want to interview me." And I said, "Oh, I know who's a good potter." And I told her one, and she said, "How many children does she have?" And I said, "Well, just one." "And what does her husband do?" "Well, she's divorced." "Oh, well, that won't do for my story," she said.
Oh.
And so then I said, "Well, I know another one. There's Eunice Prieto. She has 3 boys." "Oh, good. What does her husband do?" "Well, he's a famous potter." "Well, that won't do either. She's got to do something in her own," And then so it went. And finally, I said, I just can't. I was going to go see my mother today. This was a Friday. And so she said, "Well, if you change your mind, call me. I'm at the Hotel St. Francis." And I said, "Thank you," and took her phone number. And then I called my mother and said, "Mom, I'll be up to see you for lunch today." And then I said, there was this funny thing, this woman wants to interview me. And she said, you are as bad as your father. You don't turn down good publicity. And I said, but I'm not a famous potter. And she said, well, you will be. And you call that lady back and tell her yes, she can come. Well, you don't tell your mother no. So I hung up the phone and I called her back and said, if you want to interview me, you may. And she said, well, she'd like to. And she'd bring her photographer with her. And I taught at that time at Hillbrook School, too. And I said, maybe that would be interesting. And she said, yes. So she came and she brought this great photographer. And we moved my potter's wheel out in the open, so it wasn't out under the tree. And he took beautiful pictures. And then he took one of my kids came in from school, and she greeted them, and she took a picture of them standing by the wheel. And when Carl came in, he was in high school, I guess. He came in, and I said, this is Margaret, what was her name? Margaret White, I think, from the Ladies' Home Journal. And he thought she was somebody looking for subscriptions or something. He made a big sweeping bow and he said, how do you do? I was so embarrassed. But she walked all around the house and she looked to see how I managed with 4 children to have time for pottery. And she saw a little chart on the kitchen wall that said, it had all the kids' names, and it said like set table, clear table, wash dishes, dry dishes, and had for all the days of the week. And I hadn't made that chart. My daughter Ellen had made it. She was the big organizer. I just sort of watched it all happen, you know. But anyway, she gave me a nice interview, and it was printed in the Ladies' Home Journal at that time was a very good magazine, not like it later became. But at that time, it was very nice, and they never had cigarette ads, and they never had anything except high-quality articles. Anyway, that was the next thing. Then I thought, I've got to become a better potter if people are going to, because people would call me from all over the country asking me how I did it. And I said, I've got to do better. So I enrolled at San Jose State in the summer session. And my kids were in summer camp, and my youngest child was, my neighbor took care of him, because she only had one child, and she liked having a playmate for her. So that's how it step by step, you know. And then finally, what was it made me think I had better get a master's degree? Oh, I guess because I wanted to teach, you know, and really get good. So that's how it all happened. But it started with Carlton Ball's plates.
That's quite a story. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
Kelsey, thank you for making me feel important.